Hello, QVS AP Human Geography students. This is week 2 of Essential Unit 1 called Thinking Geographically. And before I take the time to go to the course page and explain your responsibilities for this week, I want to give you a big congratulations on your hard work in week 1. So many of you demonstrated great focus, you asked great questions, and just really big congratulations, and I commend you on that hard work. I want to encourage you to take that same degree of focus and use it as we move further into the course, because I think for many of you, the end goal is to get a 5 on the AP exam that you will take in May. On that note, the whole purpose of the first activity that I had you do last week, that mock exam, was not to get you, to see that you could do poorly on something, but mostly to introduce you to what you are up against. As I said before, I really do believe that the more you are exposed to the content of the exam and the structure of the exam, the more comfortable you will feel when that date gets nearer to us. And I think that if you understand the structure of the exam, that'll decrease a lot of anxiety that you might have. So that you were able to answer some of the multiple choice questions and then get a sense of what those free response questions look like. Maybe you weren't able to answer them. If you did, great. If you didn't, it's not a big problem. But you at least know what that exam's going to look like. There are a combination of two, so you have half the test are made up of multiple choice questions. In some cases, they give you a stimulus that you can use to help answer the question. And then the second part of the exam is free response questions. No essays, so that's a good thing. But you saw that the free response questions that I did give you had multiple parts. So you need to make sure that you are answering all parts of the question to the best of your ability. And on those FRQs, there'll be 3 of them. And one of them has no stimulus. The second one has 1 stimulus. And then the third FRQ has 2 stimulus. So use them to your advantage when you're writing, reference them, and even within the context of the weekly activities. I always give you maps that you can look back on. And one of the things that I need to make sure that you are practicing is that you are explaining and making comments on those maps. Okay, so that was the mock exam, and and its importance. The second item that I want to address is I got a lot of questions about notes and how I approach them. I want to re-emphasize a point that I wrote to many of you, and I think that I said in last week's video. Your notes will be collected at the end of the unit, so you still have some time. So if you didn't start them, you shouldn't freak out. The textbook chapter is chapter 1. It's around 30 pages long, but of course there are like maps and stuff like that in it. So not really like 30 full pages. And I think that if you do about 10 pages, read 10 pages a week for the next 3 weeks, you should be on pace. You can use the template that I gave you, but you don't have to. You're welcome to use your own note-taking method. And if you're still confused about how to approach it, please don't be afraid to ask questions. I'm happy to help. And I can meet with you or give you comments through chat on how you should approach the notes, but they're not due till the end of the unit. For unit 1, it is chapter 1 of the textbook, so that should be fairly manageable for you. Don't get scared or anything about what they're going to look like, or that I'm not going to give you a grade for them. And you can scan them or take photographs or take a video of yourself flipping through your notebook, whatever's easier, but you will have to upload that at the end of the unit. Okay, so that's the one thing, notes. The other thing I wanted to re-emphasize the importance of those activities that are called SCORM packages. They're the ones that you click on and then they open a whole nother lesson to you, and there's questions that you're answering like multiple choice, and then you see the point total in the corner increase as you answer them, and then there are free response. I had lots of questions about those this week too. It's really important that you make sure that you're interacting with the computer program correctly. So when you type a free response question and you'll see a button that says finish, you have to click that. And then lots of people got scared because your free responses that you typed in disappeared. They do get saved, but then it's really important that on the last page of the activity where there is a place for you to type in your name and click the email score button, that you do that. You type your name in and click that button, because then what happens is all of your answers get emailed to me, and then I review your answers, and then I add a total to your grade that's recorded in the grade book. That's why initially you might see like a really low score, but you have to wait for me to go back in and add points to that total. And I generally do that within a 24-hour period. Sometimes it's almost instantaneous because I'm fairly quick and watching those assignments get sent in, but it's not always the case. Like if you do them late at night, I might not get to them until the next morning. So I want to emphasize that point. And then just to kind of quickly review some of the content from week 1, we looked at different types of maps, and you need to know that there's like two main types, whether they be reference maps, and reference maps are probably maps that you've been seeing like your whole life. Like there's two main types of reference maps. They're either political, where you see the different countries or states or capitals of places. And then there are physical reference maps. The one behind me is kind of a combination of both, because like I can see the different states that are demarcated from country to country. Like I can see the lines that divide Canada from the USA. But I also can see like features like the Rocky Mountains. So, those are reference maps, these maps that we use to locate places, whether they be physical or political features. And then you have thematic maps, and I don't have a thematic map about me, but thematic maps represent like some special feature that is placed on that map, whether it be like population density or climate, or like you see in a lot of history textbooks, maps about a place before and after a war. Those are thematic maps. So you looked at those main two types of maps. And then map projections, that was another big topic. I really had fun looking at the different map projections that you created. You don't have to know them. Like this map, again, behind me, it is a Winkle triple projection. And there's like a azimuthal projection up there in the corner. And even at the bottom, if I showed you the map, there's an interrupted or a good homolocene projection, all within this one map. You don't necessarily have to memorize all of those names of the different projections. It wouldn't hurt to know a couple of them, like Mercator and Robinson. But the whole point in that activity is that you understand that there are different types of projections that, depending on the type of projection, distance, size, location can be distorted, and that there is a problem with taking something three-dimensional and presenting it on a flat surface. So there are challenges related to that, and they do create certain biases within us. So that was the whole purpose of that activity. And then you ended the week looking at geographic data and how we use technology, like especially GIS, the map layering, how we use geography and technology to create different layers of information on maps, and how that information can be used like in retail and healthcare and all of that. In fact, we're going to move further into that this week as we explore geographic data and the power of it a little bit more in week 2 activities. So let me take you to the course page and let me talk about week 2 activities so that we can move further in the class. Okay, so on the screen now, you should see week 2 right here. Okay, I had some questions last week. What do we do this week? Well, you really have to pay attention from week to week, but here we have week 2 on the screen, and I think you're going to find this week to be very manageable. Maybe last week you felt a little bit overwhelmed and you didn't have time to get a lot of stuff done. Well, you can kind of carry some of that stuff over into week 2 if you have to. And if you didn't have time to start reading the textbook, I think you're going to find that in week 2, you're going to be able to start that textbook reading. We'll take a look at 2 of the AP topics this week. The first one is called The Power of Geographic Data, and the second one is called Spatial Concepts. This is the one that I'm talking about. It's going to carry over from what we ended with last week in terms of that film that you analyzed called Geospatial Revolution. There are the daily videos for my AP. If you want to watch them, I encourage you to do so. They are short little videos about the whole topic of geographic data, and you can see that I will go into this within the context of these 2 activities that I have here. In this first activity, you're going to read an article of how geographers use data in order to make decisions about healthcare, about retail, about finances, and even more. So if you're wondering, when we collect this information by using technology like drones or GIS or GPS, what do we use this information for? Well, in politics, a lot of policy decisions are made based on it, but you'll see how, like, we even use this information in retail as well. So you'll read an article in this activity, and then you'll gather, you'll either look at some maps that I provided, or go and find some maps of your own to make a claim as to which area geographic data is more useful, whether it be like healthcare, finance, retail, or more. Okay, so you'll see the power of geographic data. And then this is a really cool activity. So I don't know if you've ever heard of the disease cholera, but most definitely you're all familiar with, the most recent pandemic with COVID-19. How we can use geography in order to um, like disease control, in order to stave off the diffusion or the spread of disease. Well, back in history, back in the 1850s, there was a cholera epidemic in London, and you're going to learn about a doctor back then, an epidemiologist. His name was Dr. Snow, and you're going to learn how he used geography to find the source of the spread of cholera in London back in the 1850s. And then, of course, you can make connections to today, like how could we use geography to study the spread of the coronavirus. So definitely, like with this activity, and that we look at geographic data, you should begin to like make connections to other events that you're familiar with by connecting it to the example that I give you from the early or mid 1800s. So, and then we move into the next topic, which is called spatial concepts. And really a big important feature of this topic is a concept called distance decay. So the further that something is away from its center or unifying principle, the issues that arise as a result of that. Like I would say, to give you an example, I would point to like a country like Russia, right? It spans over several different time zones, yet its capital, Moscow, is more in the western end of the country. Well, what are some of the challenges that its president faces in trying to unify that entire country that is so vastly large? You could say the same thing about the United States or China or Canada. But this concept of distance decay is important. And the time space, like the amount of time to get from one place to the other and how that influences decisions that are made or policies that exist and so on and so forth. So we'll get into this idea of spatial concepts in this set of activities here, first with just a simple introduction to it, and then with an applied activity to it. And I actually apply it in my last question here to the expansion of Russia. So that's what you need to do for week 2. Please remember to contact me with questions. I'm so happy to help, and we will meet so that you